This is Just Zach and Spirit Show.
So you did mention there, Charlie's work or Charles Graham's do with the ultra lightness of bias.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that is part of the work is that the first chapter of Eat Your Greens?
Yeah. So Charlie and I wrote that chapter together, and it is the first chapter. It's and I only wrote it after asking. So Eat Your Greens is for those who don't know the way of the book, or don't know what the book's all about. It's a collection of articles from a fairly large group of thinkers and writers in our industry, mostly practitioners, with the exception of, I would actually think Byron is probably the only real exception, although, people at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute and Byron obviously do work quite a bit for real companies, so to speak. So it's not just, lab work or in that sense. So I felt that was important for Eat Your Greens to have a book that was written by or contained stories and articles and thoughts from people who did real work, so to speak, who were in the trenches, so to speak.
So what sort of authors and topics are covered in your book?
Well, so the book tries to combine perspectives from people with various backgrounds. So the subtitle of the book is that it's fact-based thinking to improve your brand's health. So it's really an attempt to counter some of the nonsense in the industry, the hype. There's so much assumptions and not well argumented ideas that are being presented and shared. So this was at least an attempt to bring together a group of people that are like-minded in the way that they like to approach the profession, in a way that they offer up perspectives, but try to offer facts, ideally even evidence to support those ideas. But I wanted it to be a varied group of people, so not only people from one part of the industry, but sort of researchers and consultants or people working in advertising, media, just try to have a very sort of eclectic group of people, and I thought it would be interesting for readers at least to, not to be too academic in its setup, because fact-based thinking can quickly turn into sort of very heavy pieces. So I also try to get people involved who had a very, how would you say that, sort of light writing style, or their style would be very accessible in that sense. Yeah. We even included Tom Fishburne, who's a cartoonist, obviously. But
absolutely love his work.
Yeah, because it's great because he's maybe not offering up facts, or maybe sometimes he does in his cartoons, but a lot of his drawings and ideas do come from in a way sort of based on research, for example. But he's just he's able to draw up something and or make a point about something where most of us would need like 3,000 words to get to that point. So I sort of appreciate his work very much in the sense that he's able to, in a single drawing, make a point that very few of us could make as succinctly as he can. So.
And it's very comical, and it gets across, like you said, a huge point that, would take most of us thousands of words, or, a good sort of 10, 20-minute speech to kind of get across. And, within about 5 seconds of glancing at this image, he's able to convey such a strong message. And they're always humorous, actually, as well. I always have a good chuckle.
Oh, exactly. But again, it comes back to the point we were making, we were discussing earlier, it's how do you get a message across, and you can do it with humor. There are other writers who just who can write really very eloquently, or some others are really sort of more impressive by almost maybe presenting information and maybe in a more sort of academic way, but it's easy to read, and then it's not a problem to digest so much information, and others will just use other mechanisms. But in the end, it's all about how can you get something across. And so my attempt for the book, at least, was to sort of offer up different perspectives, different styles, so there would be something in there for most people, but there would be enough references and ideas that people could find out more about for themselves, and hopefully be a bit more inspired to learn a little bit more about certain topics, whether it's neuromarketing or I don't know, how we go about media, social media, all sorts of topics. Try to really to create something that was easy to digest, easy to pick up and lay down again. I think many people nowadays sort of maybe don't have as much patience to sit down and read for a while. I'm not saying people's attention spans are getting shorter. I don't think that's the case, but I do think we're very easily distracted with all sorts of things, whether it's notifications on your phone or just all sorts of things. So I tried to think of a thing or a format where at least it felt as if this was something you could pick up and just lay down very quickly, and you didn't need to read it in any particular order, which you don't.
Yeah, that's true.
And it ended up being quite a hefty thing, about 400 pages. So that's sort of the only thing is when you look at it, it's like, oh god, that's sort of a thick thing, isn't it? But well, once you've opened up and looked at the list of contents, you quickly notice that it's sort of short chapters. I challenge people to sort of come to the point rather quickly, to make their point quite quickly. But interestingly enough, when I ask people to write and to contribute, I very specifically chose to use a very sort of simple, open briefing. I said, you can write about anything you want, but please do provide facts for your arguments, and but you can essentially write about whatever you want as long as it's about marketing, and you support your ideas with facts and or evidence. And I took a bit of a risk there. I think I wouldn't try to do it again like that if I brief people again. But interestingly enough, there are about 36 contributors in the book, and nobody wrote about NBD.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, wow, this is a book about fact-based thinking and buying behavior. And I was thinking, oh my god, well, I think if we can't have a book that just doesn't at least describe or talk about that very fundamental thing, because it drives or explains a lot of the things that people are actually writing about in some of the other chapters. So that's when I decided to I decided to wait to write a chapter if there was any sort of obvious gap that needs to be filled. So that's when I decided to ask Charlie whether he would want to be part of writing a chapter about NBD, long-term buying, and all those things. So that's how we ended up with the first chapter, and but it's very close to what I do and what I believe is very important to focus on. So it was not a hard chapter to write in that sense, but it did. As I said, it's interesting how none of the other authors sort of mentioned it, especially when you just brief people on whether you can write about anything in marketing, just as long as it's fact or evidence based. My guess was that so this is why I said I wouldn't do it again, is that I thought I was running the risk that maybe, let's say, 10 authors would actually write about the same thing, maybe in a different way, but just address the same principle or idea, and they didn't. So that actually just also confirmed me to keep going at it and keep talking about NBD and be that steward or stewardess if you want. So yeah.
If people are looking to buy Eat Your Greens, I know that right at the beginning there was actually a bit of a backlog of orders, right? Because demand was so high. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, yeah. I think there was an interesting thing where even Marketing Week wrote about the book as it being something you definitely need to look into or pick up. There was a month before it was even published, so I think that will have helped. But indeed, the first few weeks it was really hard to get your hands on the book because it was essentially just because people could pre-order and it was sold out. And first print run, we started off quite modestly, so we needed some time to reprint things. And I think my biggest challenge is, for example, getting it more easily available in regions such as Australia, because there's quite a few people from Australia who've contributed. Mark Ritson, Byron, obviously, with Anne Ferrier, Ryan Wallman, to name a few. Kate Richardson, Ian Pritchard, so actually quite a few. And it's just really hard to make it physically available in that region. And this is the challenge, I guess, of being needing to do a lot of this stuff myself. I think it has always been sort of a challenge to get publications like this available in countries like Australia, because Amazon is apparently not really good at getting those things over there. But there's various ways you can get your hands on it. Electronically, it's not going to be that hard. You can get it on a Kindle, but physically, it's if you've got any good tips, please do let me know, because it's a bit of a challenge, guys.